Hello and welcome to Thursday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, and I think we've got an absolutely stellar puzzle for you today. Now let me show you what I'm talking about. It's going to be here. We have something called a cageless X killer Sudoku. Never in my life have I heard of one of these before, and indeed Shinya, who is the author, said that this is an experimental Sudoku puzzle, and we'll go through the rules in just a second. You can see the difficulty is 4 out of 5 stars on Logic Masters Germany, which means it's going to be hard. But the reason it got my attention is this. It has a rating of 100%, which means everyone who solved it has loved it. Now, this merits our attention. And yeah, we'll go through the rules in a sec, but I want to just mention to you a crossword clue, believe it or not. So this crossword clue was sent to me this morning on Twitter. Here it is in the top, in this box here. Sales of toilet rolls to self-isolate, ? And this is an example of complete crossword genius. I think we can all guess the subject that's being sort of described in the clue. Now, the reason this is so clever is that the word rolls here is being used as an anagram indicator. Because believe it or not, if you anagram the letters of to self-isolate, you get sales of toilet. So this whole clue is an example of an anagram, which is of course why the answer is 7 letters long. But on a more serious point, or semi-serious point, obviously the world is changing at the moment. Mark and I are going to keep doing videos for as long as we're healthy enough to do that. But when we have more time, please do let your friends know about the channel. Believe it or not, over the last 2 years, we've had probably 10 emails from people who suffer from various forms of mental health, and they have really found this channel to help them because it occupies their minds, it gets their brain involved. And at times when we're all feeling a bit lonely, I think this channel could be useful to many of us. So do tell your friends if you think this channel might be interesting for them. Now let's go back to these rules, because as I was typing in the puzzle to our software, I was trying to get my head around what on earth this was talking about. So standard Sudoku rules apply. I mean, let me just show you. This is the actual puzzle we're going to try and do today. It's bonkers. We've got some cages. So it's normal killer Sudoku, I think. A cage is a group of orthogonally adjacent cells. Okay. Numbers must not repeat in a cage. Okay, this is all fine. Here it gets difficult though. The clues outside the grid in the form of m to the bracket n indicate that the xth cell of the row column is part of a cage with the sum of m consisting of n cells. X is the first number in the row or column. So, I mean, this is completely bananas, but let's have a look at the example and see if we can understand what it means. So let's look at this 7-3 clue. Now the first digit next to the, in the first position next to the 7-3 clue is a 3. Now I think what this means is we have to go 3 cells in, so 1, 2, 3, and then we know this cell is going to be 3 cells large because of the 3 here, and sum to 7, and you can see indeed that is the case. Let's try it again with another digit. Let's use the 8 on this side. So okay, so the 8 brackets 3, the first cell from this side of the grid is a 1. That means this cell itself must be part of a 3-digit cage that sums to 8, and indeed it does. Goodness me. So here, let's look at the 3-2 clue, where the first digit is a 4. So we go 4 squares in, 1, 2, 3, 4. This cell would be part of a 2-cell cage that sums to 3, and it does. Right. Okay, so hopefully you've all got that. You've probably, you're thinking this is going to be a walk in the park. Here is the actual puzzle. I'm going to check my mouse is working before we start. It looks good, actually. It looks good. And with that, let's have a look. How do we do the puzzle? Obviously, as usual, click on the link under the video to have a go at this very unusual Sudoku. Now we've got three 2 clues here and here. Now what does that mean? I was about to say it must mean we... Oh no, the mouse is not working. Hang on, I'm just going to fix it. Okay, we've got liftoff. Now I was looking at the 3 2 clues. Now I was about to say that must mean that this clue has to be part of a... What's it going to be? A 2-cell cage that adds to 3, starting in this square. But I don't think that is true. I mean, there's nothing... So if this was a 5, say, what does that mean? It would mean that this cell would be part of a 2-cell cage summing to 3, and this cell would be part... Oh, goodness, that's no use at all. So I don't know anything. The 3 2 clue tells me nothing. Right, that is not how to start the puzzle. Let's look somewhere else. Where? Sorry about this. Let me just stare at this for a moment. Maybe we've got to try and work out where 1s or 9s go in rows or columns. So I'm going to look down this column and try and think about, because wherever I put the 1, that means that this clue is going to be immediately relevant. I'm going to be able to know where this clue is, and the 1 has to go somewhere in the column. So that, yeah. Okay, so this square, for example, just cannot be a 1, because if I put a 1 here, it will then have to be part of a 20 cage in 3 cells, which it can't be, because you can't make 2 digits add to 19. So the 1 is not here. Same reason here, the 1 is not here. A 35 cage in 5 cells must include, or can't include a 1. That could be a 1. Oh, that could be a 1. That, oh goodness, that could be a 1. That can't be a 1. That can be a 1. Oh Lord. Okay, that's not helping. Just have a quick scan. Oh no, 1 can go in loads of positions along. Oh my goodness, this is not going well at all. I don't know how to do this. There are some clues that are repeated. So there are 3 of this one. 35, 5. I don't see how to do that. I mean, two of those ones, 31, 5. $16.5, there's 2 of those. But the problem with this is that it's not necessarily the case that these are the same cage. So you know, this 16.5 could indicate a, you know, that shape over there, and this 16.5 could indicate this shape here. Yeah, it could, because this could even be the 1 which shields the 1 from breaking any of these clues. Oh, this is a nightmare. This is not easy. When I say not easy, I mean I don't know what to do. I'm going to try and add I'm going to try and add the numbers here. I'm just wondering if we can pinpoint something about the grid. We know there are 81 cells in this grid. So if we add up all of these numbers, we're going to find how many cages overlap in effect. In fact, what we could do is we could just add all of the individual numbers. So for example, this 20, there are 2 clues that are 23. So I'm just going to add one lot of 23, and let's see how many cages overlap in the grid. So we've got 3, 8. So we can just add this column actually up, because I'm going to start with this column and then see if I get repeats in this one. So 8, 14, 19, 24, 26, 34, 38. Now 32, 5. No, that's not in there. So that's 43. That one is there, so we can't count that one. 43, that's not there. So 43, 49, 52. That one's repeated. That one's not. So that's 56. I've not had that one, so 58. Not had that one. 62. Have had that one, so we're at 62 so far. We've had that one, that's there. 62. 62. No, we've not had that one. 67. We've had that one. 67. No. 72. No, we've not had an 11-2, so 72, 74, 76, 78. Now that one would be repeated, so we're still on 78. That one's been repeated, so we're still on 78. That one's repeated, still on 78. That one's not repeated, so that's 81. 32, 5. That's repeated. That's repeated. That's repeated. So we've got 81. So now. Okay. Well, that is it. That is fascinating. That is definitely important. At least I'm not quite sure. Right, so these bracketed numbers add to 81. Therefore, every time there is a repeated clue, we know that the repeated clues share a cage. Otherwise, this grid would need to have more than 81 digits in it. So, let's come back to the 3-2 clue again then. Because now we know that these 2 digits here have to share a cage. These are not separate cages. It's not one over here and one over here. These are in the same position. So this square is going to have to be, this square has to be in both. So this has to be a 1 or a 2. And it can't be a 2, because if this is a 2, that means from this direction, this square here would have to be in the cage. So it would have to be a 1, but from this direction, this square would have to be in the cage and would have to be a 1, and we get repeated 1s. So we're going to get a digit. We get a digit in the grid. Good grief. Now, is that helpful? Now, one of these squares is a 2, but we don't know which one. So now what we've got to do is spot clues that have repeated clues. So 35.5 is over here. And that, and here. Whoa, now, there we go. So these, how can we arrange, if we know these clues all refer to the same cage in the Sudoku, and it's a 5-cell large cage, the only way I can get to this down here, this line, which we know one of these cells along this line must be hinted at by this clue, and get to this line, yeah, it is 5 cells different, is if these are in a straight line. And we also know that that straight line must include a cell in this column. So those 5 cells are a cage. And they add to 35. So we actually know what digits are in there, because the only way of making 35 and 5 cells is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we know that this square has to point at that cage, so that has to be an 8. This square has to be a 2. And this square has to be a 2. No, hang on, let me just check my logic was is my logic correct? Yes, my logic was, well, no, my logic was wrong. That does have to be a 2, but not for the reason I was thinking. I was thinking the 2 has to point at this cage, but of course this could be 3, 4, 5, or 6 from here, and that would still point into this cage. But the point is, this square can't be a 2, because if this square is a 2, that means that this square would have to be part of a 13 cage, and it's not, it's part of a 35 cage. So this square is not a 2. This square is a 2. Oh my goodness. 17 minutes into the puzzle. I am so sorry. This is going to be a long one. This is going to be a long one. I've only got, well, I've got this cage actually. In fact, I need to note what cages are which. So I've used these 3 2 clues up. I am going to make those just to delete them. I've placed the 35 clues and filled the digits in with the options, so I'm going to get rid of those as well. Okay, so we've got 17.2 here. So the only way of making 17 in 2 cells is with an 8 and a 9. So this square must be an 8 or a 9. Because there's no way I can get far enough away, given I know there's got to be 1 in this row and 1 in this column, and it's a 2-cell cage. You know, I can't start the cage here, because if I start the cage here, it's never going to be a long enough cage to get down to this row. So this square is always part of it, and then the other square will be one of those 4 positions, but we don't know which one. But we do know that this square, therefore, 1, 2, 3, this must be a 5, 6, or a 7. And this square must be 3, 4, or 5, which is absolutely useless. No, hang on. But something that isn't useless. Oh, this is beautiful. Look, these 2 clues are the same clue. So how can I possibly, given that there needs to be one of these squares needs to be in a 30 cage of size 6, and one of these squares needs to be in a 30 cage of size 6. If I try even this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I can never get back to this column. So none of these can be in the 30,6. This is in the 30,6. cage, and it's 6 cells large. So those squares are all in. Oh. And there are no one cell clues. None of these clues are 1 cell large. So if I don't want to isolate this square must be in this cage. We need it to be a size 6. So that is a cage, but we don't know what numbers are in it, but we know it's of size 30. So 30 plus 1 is 31. These two cells have to sum up to 14 because we know the total for the column will be 45. That's obviously what you get if you add all of the numbers from 1 to 9. This is an absolutely brilliant puzzle, by the way. This is absolutely brilliant. I think the only other puzzle on the channel that I've solved and been completely flummoxed at the start in terms of what to do was the first hidden skyscraper puzzle that Laura sent us, Laura Solar. But this, if anything, was even more bamboozling, and I've very far from finished it yet. So let's carry on. Now look, this square must point into this purple region, so this can't be a 9, so that can't be a 5, 5, 6, and yeah, all of the other squares are in the region. But that square's got to be a 9 because it's got to point at the right cage. Right, so that can't be a 9. That can't be an 8. These 3 squares have got to be 1, 3, and 4. This can't be a 4, because if it was a 4, this 12,4 clue would share a cage with a 30k or 35 cage. That's not possible, so that's not 4. This is a 1 or a 3. Now look, we've got 31,5 here. These again are 5. Yeah, they are 5 rows difference. 1, 2, 3, 5. Yeah, so these 31,5 clues are a straight line. They've got to be like this. It's the only way we can reach this row and this row with the same cage. And we've got 6, 8, and a 9 here. Well, it can't be this column. You can never get to 31 in 5 cells if you can't use a 9 and an 8, that's for sure. So this is not a 9. This is not a 5. This is a 6, 8 pair. Oh, hang on. This can't be a 6 either, because if this is a 6, this cage is going to be in those squares, and we know that this square is part of the 17,2 cage. So this is an 8. This is a 6. This cage over here is there. I'll make that one red as well. And that must be a 2 because it needs to point at the cage. So we've positioned the cage, but we don't know where it goes. So again, I'm going to make that grey. I mean, we've positioned the cage, but we don't know what goes in it. Oh. We don't have a clue here to use this 6 for. This is a 31 cage. here's something interesting. Look, there's a 22.5 cage here. Now, so we need to have one cell at least from this row and one cell at least from this row. Well, if this 22.5 is pointing up here, let's say it was this square was included in the cage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can never get down to this row. So none of these can possibly be part of the 22.5 cage. So this square is part of the 22.5 cage. And therefore this is a 1. There is a 1 in this column here. And so now we've got 31 here. Plus 1 is 32. These three squares have got to sum up to 13 without using a 9 or an 8. There's still options there. Oh, but no, we've got 16 and 5 clues that duplicate. So, this is so beautiful. So now we know one of those squares must be a 16.5 cage, and one of these squares must be a 16.5 cage, but we know these are part of the same cage as usual. So how, if this square, no, this can't be. We know that a 16 cage in 5 cells must be 1, 2, 3, 4 and 6, so it can never use the 9. So there's no, so this square is definitely the own in the 16.5 cage. So let's make that purple. It can't use the 9, so it's got to come down at least 4 squares. Oh, but if this square is the 5th square of the 16.5 cage, one of these squares would be a 2, and that would clash with this. So this square is the last square of the 16.5 cage. So this square is a 1, because it needs to point at this position. This square can't be a 5 anymore, because it's got to be 3, 4 or 6. These two squares are 3, 4 or 6. These two squares are 5 or 7. This one can't be a 5, because if it's a 5, this square is, or this clue, this cage is overlapping with the 16 cage. Well, it's definitely, a 32 cage is not the same thing as a 16 cage, so that's a 7. This is a 5. That's not a 5 now. There's a 1 in one of those two squares from these ones, and that one over there. 7. So this clue is, that's fine. In fact, we've done the 16 clue now. We've positioned it and we know what numbers are in it. So we've got a oh, no. Look, we've got repeated 32 5 clues, which of course are 5 columns apart. So this clue is pointing at this square, therefore those are another cage. And a 32 cage can't contain a 1 in 5 cells, so this is not the 1. That must be a 1. And now these two squares mean there's a 1 in one of these three. Well, we've just said there can't be a 1 in the 32 cage, so that's a 1. Oh, this 1 sees that square, so that's a 3. There's so many things going on here. My brain is starting to shout at me. This needs to be a 3 because obviously this clue is part of this cage, so this needs to point at that cage. So, but we don't know what's in it, but I can grey it because I've positioned it, so that's fine. This can't be an 8. So this is 32, 33. These have to sum to 12. This can't be an 8 because that would need a 1, 3 with it. It can't be a 7 because that would need a 2, 3 or a 1, 4, both of which are ruled out. And it can't be a 6 because that would need a 2, 4 or a 1, 5, both of which are ruled out. That is a 5. And therefore these two squares have got to add up to 7 without using 1 and 2, so this is a 3, 4 pair. So now these squares have got to be 2, 6, 7, 8. These can't be 8. But now I've got the digits in this clue as well, so I'm gonna blacken that and feel like I'm making progress. Now, look at row 1. Where can an 8 and a 9 go in row 1? Well, given the 8, 9 here, they can't go in these squares, so there's only 2 squares that can be 8 and 9. Those two. Now, can we tell anything about which way round this goes? Right. So we've got a 12, 4 and a 12, 4 here, and the 3 means this square is part of the 12, 4 cage. So that square is part of the 12, 4 cage. What does that mean? Sorry about this. I'm trying to get my head around how this 12, 4 cage looks. So either this square or this square are in the 12, 4 cage. But it's interesting to note here that it's not possible for all these 3 squares to be in the 12, 4 cage, because if they are, these 3 cells add to 8, so there would have to be another 4 in the cage, which would break the cage. So one of these squares at least is not in the 12, 4 cage. And well, and the 8 can never be in the 12, 4 cage. So if the 6 can't be in the 12, 4 cage because we can never get to this cage, this cell, and keep ourselves below 12. So neither of these squares is in the 12, 4 cage. And these add to 14. So what clue are these part of? Could be part of that clue, actually. Oh, well, they probably can be part of this clue. If this is a 6, that square would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would work. Oh no, 5. It's a 5 clue, not. If this is, I'm getting confused. If this is a 6, that gets to here, but this is a 5 clue. 1, 2. No, this is not part of this 22, 5 clue. So, what are these part of? The only clue, maybe that one. No, this is weird. This is, because I need one of these three, well, in fact, precisely one of these two squares. So if it was this one, this would form a wall. It's either going to be a wall like that or a wall like this, but it's going to form a wall. So this has to, I think, be part of the 22-4 clue. 8 and 6 is 14, so I need 8 more. So 3 and 5 would be possible. Four is absolutely impossible. And 1 and 7 would require a 7 here, for example. In fact, I think a 7 there exactly. But now the 12 clue is impossible because this square would be in the 12 clue and would be 4 cells large, and I couldn't come back to it. So I'm making a complete pig's ear of this, but I think this has to take this cell. And that would mean that's a 5. And this is a, let me make that blue. And that positions that and takes this clue. So that clue can be rubbed out. And now this can't be a 9. This has to be an 8. That has to be a 9. This is a green cell clue. There are no 1 cell clues, so this is a green cell clue. So 1 and 4 are in the 12 cage. So the other 2 cells must be 2 and 5 to make 12 without repeating a digit. So the 5 needs to be outside of this box, because otherwise we repeat the 5, and the only way that can be the case is if that is the 5. Good grief. Oh, this is so interesting, but also brutal. There's a 5 in one of those 2 squares. This clue is now done. Yeah, we've positioned and got the numbers in there. And what can we do next? So this 19 clue starts here, look, and it's 3 cells large, so it must take those, so it's these 2 and then either this one or this one. This 9 clue starts here. Wow. 39 minutes so far. Let's look at this row. Look, these 2 squares have got to be 4, 6 or 7. Now can we... we might be able to do something, because we know what the value of this red cage is. 31, 32. These add up to 13. Oh, but more interesting, if these add to 13, 13 plus 5 plus 8 plus 9 is 35, 36. These 2 squares have got to add up to 9. So this one can't be a 4. If this is a 4, that would have to be a 5. Oh, and in fact, the only way of making these add up to 9 is if this is a 2. So that's a 2, that's a 7. This is a 4, this is a 6, yes. And now, that's a shame. The 6 is pointing exactly at that square, so we can't detect which of those is the other 8 or 9. This is a 6, this is a 3. These aren't 2, 6 anymore. 6. I suppose I'm able to write in the options here 2, 5, 7, 8, 9. So the 2 has to be here, doesn't it? Because of these 2's, and that gives me a 5 as well. So 5, 7, 8, 9. So this has to be an 8 or a 9. Oh, it has to be a 9 actually. It's the only thing that can go in that square. Is that right? 2, 5, 7, 8. No, not 2. So 5, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, this one can only be 9. These squares have got to be 5, 7, and 8. These 2 squares have got to be 7 and 9. Didn't see that for ages. This square can't be a 9 because that would imply the 24, 5 clue would be part of this cage, and this cage was the 16 clue. So that's a 7. That's a 9. It's a 7 in one of these 2 squares, a 9 in one of these 2 squares because of the 9 up there. These 3 squares have got to be 2, 4, 5. So these 3 squares are 6, 7, 9. Ah, there's a 6, 7 there. So that square is a 9. This square and this square are a 6, 7 pair. And we're still looking to place 3, 4, and 5 into those squares. Right, so the 36 clue, we've now got the digits in, so I'm going to make that, I'm going to blacken out that clue. Similarly for the 31, 5 clue, we've done that clue. Ah, now that one, look, can't be a 6, because if that's a 6, that takes that square. Now this cage is the 12 cage, it's not the 22 cage. So this is not 6, this is 6. That puts a 6 into one of those 2 squares. Look, where it forms a 6, 7 pair, and there's a 6 up there. So this is 6, this is 7, that's 8. This 8 sees the 9. That forces a 9 here. So now we know that the 8 that makes up this 17-2 clue is in one of those 2 squares. It can't be here because this is a 5, 7, 8, so it must be here. So this is a cage. And we've done the 17 clue. This has got to be a 3 or a 4, looking at these 2 squares. And the fact there's a 1 here. In fact, there's a 1 in one of those squares, which forces the 1, 4 pair on this side. 4 in one of those 2 squares. This square's got to be an 8. This 26, 6 clue now so starts in this square. Oof. Oh, but the 9, the 20. Oh, hang on, yeah, look. So this square is part of the 20,3 clue, and it's a 3. Therefore, this must be 3, 8, 9, so it must be those squares. That's the only positions it can be. Let's use, what should we use for that? Grey. So these clues are done. So this 9, we've already looked at this. But it's very tempting to think this could be a 4 now, because that would make that work, wouldn't it? If this is not 4... Oh, no, it has to be 4, because this is a 2, 4 pair. So if I make this a 2, I need an 8 to make the 19 total work, and the 8's too far away. So this is 4, this is 2, and this is a region, and the 19.3 clue is filled. This is just, imagine having this idea, and then imagine setting it with this much aplomb. I mean, we are so lucky on this channel to come across these puzzles. It's just genius. There's no other word for it. Now, 1, 3, and 8 into those squares. So 3's in one of those two positions, the 8's in one of those two positions. Oh, the 13 clue can be done now. 9, so it's got to be the 8 and the 5. Given that's in, we need the 5, so it's those two. We'll make that green. That can be filled in. Now this 22.5 clue, which we can't isolate the 7, so it must take those 3 squares. That's 16. So we need 2 more squares to add up to 6. Well, that's got to be that one and that one. That's the only way we can make 6 more. So these 2 squares are in the 22 cage. This has to be a 4. This is a 3. That's a 4. That can't be an 8 or a 9, look. This clue is filled. 3. That works with the 3 there as well. That's good. So that clue's done. Now this 11.3 clue starts in this square, so it must be 713. So this can't be an 8, because the only way we can make 713 is if this is a 1. That's a 1. This is a cage. Let's make it blue to differentiate the colours. This is finished. This must be an 8 now. These 3 squares have got to be 3, 6, and 9. Right, so what do we do next? So this 24.5 clue, look, starts in this square, and given the walling, those 3 squares must be included. We can make this grey. Oh, I tell you what we can do. Look, this 26.6 clue, we've got an 8 there, which is hitting this square. Well, what else can get into these squares up here? In fact, this might mean I've made a mistake. Because, how do I get into... maybe the 18.5 clue. So, yeah, okay, I could just about get to... but this square, in fact, is going to have to be part of the 6, isn't it? Because the furthest away, or the furthest into this region I can make this 18.5 clue go is that square. Therefore, these 5 squares are definitely part of the 26.6 clue. Now, that means that one must be the 6th one, self-evidently. So, these add up to 8, 13, 21. This is a 5. To make 26. That's a 4. And these squares now, those 2 at least, probably, no, yeah, we can't isolate. I think this 11.2 and 18.5, because I need the 18.5 to reach into this square. I don't see how I can possibly do that if that square is part of the 11. So these 3 squares are part of the 18 cage. That means this square must be a 3, because we need to point the 11 cage at something that isn't in the 18 cage. So that's a 4. So this is going to go with a 7, which could be here. Or maybe it could be here if this is in the 18 cage. Oh, wow, it still doesn't give up its secrets. Neither of those can be 3 anymore. The 26-6 cage is done. This is part of this 9 cage, so let's label that a different colour just to keep track that that is part of a different cage. So many of these cells can't be reached by a lot of these cages now. I mean, how can I, given this is part of the 18 cage, these 2 squares must be part of this 24-5 cage because nothing else can get to them. So the 24-5 cage is filled. And in fact, these squares are 3, 6 and 9 looking at this. So 3, 6 and 9 add up to 18, 23. So I think that has to be a 1. Can it be a 1? Yes, in fact, I could have placed it as a 1. I was just missing the Sudoku looking at the complicated stuff. So that is brilliant news because that does suggest we're on the right track here. So that does this clue. So how do we get to this square now? What can get to this square? The 18-5 clue can't get to it. The 18-3 clue can't get to it. The only thing that can get to it is the 16. Hang on, have I made a mistake here? What gets to this square? Oh no, I haven't made a mistake because this starts in this square. So that does just have enough room to get to that point. Wow. So these must be a cage. Let's work out the value of that in a second. So this, yes, 18, this is a 1. It is a 1, yes. So this 18 cage is correct now. The 16 cage comes round here. The 9 cage must go vertically. And you can see it must be 3 and 6. It's the only option left to make 9. So we can blacken that one in. This square can't be isolated. Oh, yeah, in fact this square, as it's part of the 11 cage, needs a 7. It can only get that 7. So this is a region. Let's make that one. So, and that's perfect, look. That just gives enough room for sort of a C-shaped 18-5 clue. Oh, hang on. Why did I think this was 3, 6, 9? It's not. But I don't think it matters because I didn't use any of the numbers to do anything. It's 3, 6, 7. That still looks okay, yeah. So we've got 2, 5 here. That must be the 2. This is a 5. That fixes the 5 and the 4. That means that's a 5. Seven, 8's done. The 3, 6 isn't done. This one is going to resolve. So 18, 5. We've got 7, 12. That's got to be a 6. That's brilliant. That resolves the 3 and the 6. Gives us a 9 here. Oh, please let me have got this right. 9, 6, 7, 8. This can't be... Sorry, it can't be 6. That's got to be a 6 there. So this is a 7. That's an 8. That's a 9. That fixes the 8 and the 7. Oops. That 7 gives us a 7 here and a 3 here. That gives us a 3 and a 6. And that looks like a 4. And a 4 is the right... It does go in. And does this sum work? Yes, it does. I think this is the right answer. Let's fill in those so it makes it look better. What a puzzle, Shinya. That is quite... well, it's one of the most original Sudoku ideas I've ever seen in my life. This is the longest video we've done on a Sudoku on the channel, just under an hour. I apologise for that. I'm just not clever enough to do it quicker. Let me know how you got on. I will be fascinated to hear. Yeah, one of the best puzzles we've ever had on the channel. Fantastic. See you next time on Cracking the Cryptic.